Picture the first floor of a converted vodka bar in St. Louis. It's September 2022.
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Right, so outside, you have all these fans pressed up against velvet ropes, and cameras are basically beaming the room to thousands of people all around the world.
Yeah, the Cinco Field Cup, it's a huge deal.
Exactly. And inside, sitting at this incredibly quiet table, is a 32-year-old man who is widely considered to be, the greatest chess player to ever live.
Magnus Carlsen.
Magnus Carlsen. And he is just staring at his opponent. And this opponent is a 19-year-old kid in a T-shirt who, he barely ranked 40th coming into this whole tournament.
Hans Niemann.
Right. And this kid isn't sweating. He isn't intimidated at all. He's just gazing around the room, casually chewing a piece of bubble gum, and utterly dismantling the reigning champion of the world.
It is a scene that fundamentally broke a 1,500-year-old sport. Literally broke it.
It really did. And welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive into benmezrich's 2026 book, Checkmate. Today, we are unpacking the biggest scandal in the entire history of chess.
Yeah, and for you listening, we need to establish right away that this is not, a dry exploration of board game rules.
Oh, definitely not.
Not at all. We are looking at this massive, dramatic narrative about what happens when an ancient analog game violently collides with the billion-dollar digital age. We're talking about Siliconvalley underdogs, isolated child prodigies.
Literal religious cults, too.
Yes, literal religious cults.
And staggering sums of money. The whole chess world was brought to its knees, not by some supercomputer, but by a distracted 19-year-old chewing gum.
It's wild. So let's start right back in that vodka bar at the Cinco Field Cup, because the mismatch at this table is almost comical.
It really is.
You have Magnus Carlsen, who is essentially the reigning deity of chess. He holds a 2882 ELO rating.
Which is just insane.
Big.
Right. For context for you listening, that isn't just good. That is the highest rating ever recorded in human history. It is objectively higher than Garry Kasparov or Bobby Fischer.
He's the peak.
The absolute peak. And he walked into that room riding a streak of 53 consecutive in-person wins.
53, just untouchable.
Yeah. And sitting across from him is Hans Niemann, this Gen Z player, who only got a seat at the table as a last-minute replacement because another grandmaster got caught up in COVID travel restrictions.
Right, Richard Rappaport couldn't make it, so Niemann is just this incredibly lucky alternate.
Exactly. So Magnus approaches the game expecting, an easy win.
Yeah, he opens with the fianchetto variation against Niemann's Nimzo Indian defense.
Which sounds like a foreign language to most people.
I know. But the significance of that specific, highly obscure opening is super crucial to understand. Magnus isn't just playing a standard line here.
You try to mess with him, right?
Exactly. He is deliberately trying to drag this teenager out of his memorized, computer-generated preparation. Magnus wants to force the kid into deep, weird, completely unmapped territory where raw human intuition has to take over.
Because he assumes Niemann will just get flustered and make some brash 19-year-old mistakes.
Right. But instead, Niemann counters with sublime, near-optimal responses.
It's crazy. Deep in the game, at move 42, Niemann's knight escapes this hyper-complex bishop attack that honestly maybe 5 people on Earth could have calculated in real time.
And then at move 48, he catches Magnus in a really rare king error and just capitalizes perfectly.
And the entire time, Niemann looks completely unbothered.
That's the part that drives Magnus crazy.
Yeah, he's staring dead-eyed at Magnus for unnatural amounts of time. To put this in perspective for you, it's like an amateur walking onto a basketball court, popping a bubblegum bubble, and just casually dunking on Michael Jordan in his prime.
It's a great analogy. The psychological toll this takes on a champion like Magnus is just profound. Mezrich's book actually compares losing a grandmaster chess match to Hemingway's famous quote about bankruptcy.
Oh, that it happens gradually and then suddenly.
Exactly. Magnus is sitting there, physically sweating, tasting bile, realizing that his gradual loss is accelerating into sudden death. And he begins to suspect that something incredibly unnatural is happening.
But I'm struggling to buy this paranoia entirely, though. If Niemann is just a kid raised on screens, couldn't it simply be that the game has evolved?
How do you mean?
Well, every new generation beats the old one. We see this in every sport. Why is Magnus immediately assuming something nefarious or unnatural, rather than just admitting he might be getting outplayed by a newer, faster operating system?
That is the pivotal question. It really is. To understand why Magnus felt his entire reality was crumbling, and why he immediately leaped to the conclusion of an existential threat, We have to look at how Magnus's own operating system was built. He couldn't comprehend Niemann's playstyle because Magnus's entire foundation as a player was rooted in a fundamentally different era of human cognition. I mean, long before he was the panicked veteran, Magnus was the terrifying teenager upsetting the old guard.
Right, so let's rewind the clock to the spring of 2004 to see that foundation.
Let's do it.
We're in a dark SUV driving through the Norwegian countryside. 13-year-old Magnus is asleep in the back seat while his father, Henrik, drives them home from Oslo.
And Magnus has just absolutely stunned the global chess community.
Yeah, at a tournament in Reykjavik, this kid fought the legendary Garry Kasparov to a draw and outright beat former world champion Anatoly Karpov.
Which is unheard of for a 13-year-old, and his childhood was completely unprecedented too.
Oh, totally. At 2.5 years old, Magnus was quietly completing 500-piece jigsaw puzzles.
Just for fun.
Yeah. By age 4, he had memorized the locations, populations, and coats of arms of all 356 Norwegian municipalities.
Which is just a staggering level of recall.
And he would engage in these massively complex Lego builds for hours, like skipping meals, and then just stare at the ceiling when he finished, just processing the structures in his head.
But the fascinating detail in the sources is that when his dad first tried to teach him chess, Magnus couldn't have cared less.
He wanted to play soccer.
Right. The game only really clicked for him at age 7, and only because he lost to his older sister and his competitive drive kicked in.
And his playstyle was completely alien to the traditional grandmasters of the time. They all relied on rote memorization and heavy, structured opening theory.
Yeah, very rigid.
But Magnus relied on pure, unfiltered intuition. His dad actually noted that numbers and board positions seemed to tell Magnus stories.
And the media didn't really know how to categorize that kind of intuitive genius. After the Kasparov match, a famous Washington Post article dubbed him the Mozart of chess.
Which I have to argue right alongside Henrik's perspective in the book here. Calling him Mozart is a terrible analogy.
You think why?
Well, Mozart implies a performance, or like a painter standing in front of a canvas applying strokes. Magnus wasn't painting the chessboard, he was the painting.
Oh, wow.
The board was just an extension of his internal logic. But looking at this from a human level, I have to ask, how does a highly introverted kid, someone who literally told reporters that chess isn't cool, survive being turned into a global commodity?
Well, he survives by carrying an incredibly heavy psychological burden. Being a prodigy means your entire life becomes defined by this relentless upward trajectory. You are constantly rising, but you are haunted by an unknown ceiling.
Because eventually you have to plateau.
Right, exactly. Kasparov himself warned about this phenomenon. When you're the young prodigy, your victories put you on the front page as a miracle.
But the moment you lose to the next generation,
you are on the front page as the aging victim. Yeah. Magnus's rise was completely organic and intuitive, conquering a world of older men. But as he reached the absolute pinnacle of his career, the foundation of the sport began shifting underneath him. The era of analog intuition was ending.
the machines were waking up.
Precisely.
And Magnus's ultimate collision with technology actually started years before he ever sat down across from Hans Niemann. We need to jump to November 2013 to the World Championship in Chennai, India.
Right, it's a 22-year-old Magnus taking on the 43-year-old hometown hero, Viswanathan Anand.
And the setting is wild. Magnus is sitting inside a glass-walled, soundproof cube on a stage, completely surrounded by thousands of screaming fans held back by local police.
It's like a rock concert. And Anand represents the first true champion of the digital era.
How so?
Well, to grasp what Magnus is facing in that glass cube, we have to look at the massive technological leap in chess engines. Back in 1996, it took a multi-million-dollar IBM supercomputer, Deep Blue, to beat Kasparov.
To the famous match.
Right. But by 2013, the algorithms had evolved to the point where they could calculate 200 million positions a second.
That is just unfathomable.
And Anand embraced this shift entirely. He had a dedicated wing of the Hyatt Regency Hotel filled with a team of grandmasters who were just running Magnus's entire historical playstyle through these computer engines.
So they were mapping out every possible opening, discovering these mathematical advantages that a human brain could never find on its own.
Exactly. And for the first 4 games of that championship, the machine preparation worked flawlessly.
Magnus was completely trapped in Anand's computer-generated web. They ground out 4 grueling draws, and Magnus was visibly frustrated.
Because he realized he could not outcalculate the silicon chips in Anand's hotel wing.
Right. So in Game 5, Magnus initiates this brilliant pivot. He decides to introduce chaos.
And the concept of chaos in elite chess is fascinating. Magnus deliberately abandons optimal engine-approved openings. He forces the game into a messy, deeply unpredictable middle game.
I want to break down what that actually means on the board. He starts making moves that are technically suboptimal.
Which goes against everything you're taught.
Right. But by doing so, he creates millions of complex branching paths. It's like a jazz musician intentionally dropping the tempo and playing off-key just to short-circuit a classically trained orchestra.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
He overloads Anand's human memory. If the computers are objectively smarter and calculating hundreds of millions of moves a second, Magnus's messy strategy shouldn't work. But it does.
It works because it exposes the core vulnerability of early computer preparation.
Which is what?
Well, the engines of 2013 relied on calculating expected optimal lines of play. By dragging Anand away from those optimal lines and into deep, unmapped waters, Magnus forced Anand to think on his feet. Anand was prepared for perfection, not chaos.
So under that immense cognitive load, Anand just breaks.
Yeah, he makes a fatal human error on move 13, trading queens when he absolutely shouldn't have. Magnus capitalizes, shatters the digital prep, and takes the world title.
So Magnus wins the battle for human intuition. But he didn't realize that while he was being thrown into a hotel pool in India, fully clothed and celebrating his victory, the very definition of machine preparation was being rewritten halfway across the world.
It was.
A group of unlikely misfits in a California backyard was building the digital arena that would soon dictate the rest of his career.
So now we're shifting to the spring of 2014 in Mountain View, California. We meet the founders of this scrappy startup, Eric Alabest, Jay Severson, and Danny Wrench.
And these guys are the absolute antithesis of your typical Silicon Valley tech titans.
Oh, completely. Eric is this emotional, deeply family-oriented Mormon whose previous business experience basically involved kneeling on the floor of a Salt Lake City warehouse, literally taping up boxes of plastic chess pieces to sell to high schools.
And Danny Wrench's background is even more intense.
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
He grew up in a fundamentalist cult in Arizona called the Church of Immortal Consciousness.
Wait, a literal cult?
A literal cult. He was a child chess prodigy, but the cult leader completely exploited his talent, parading him around to tournaments. For Danny, chess was basically his only tether to the normal outside world.
Wow.
But his dreams were violently derailed when he suffered severe simultaneous ear infections on an airplane flight. His eardrums ruptured, and he couldn't play competitively for over a year.
That is just tragic. But it means these are guys who view chess not as some casual hobby, but as a lifeline.
Exactly. And that desperation and passion really drove their business strategy. Eric was actually attending Stanford Business School when he discovered the domain name chess.com was tied up in a bankruptcy auction.
So what does he do?
He goes to Fuki Sushi in Palo Alto, which is this famous spot where billionaires usually sign massive tech deals. And Eric bids exactly $56,000.56 to buy the domain out of bankruptcy.
$56,000? That practically drained his bank account.
It did. And then he has to go pitch venture capitalists to actually fund the site.
Oh, the rejection stories in the book are brutal. Elite VCs literally laughed them out of the room. They viewed chess as this dead, smoke-filled room hobby for old men.
In one meeting, Eric pitched a Stanford buddy who completely misheard him and said, Cheese.com, that's a great idea. People love cheese.
Cheese.com, that is hilarious.
So we have three guys operating out of a literal backyard yurt. I mean, how did they manage to capture a global community when the smartest money in Silicon Valley insisted it was a terrible investment?
They succeeded because they fundamentally altered the mechanics of how the game was consumed. They didn't just build a digital board, they democratized the entire ecosystem.
Because traditional chess was heavily gatekept.
Incredibly gatekept. It required travel, expensive tutors, physical tournaments. But chess.com introduced asynchronous play, seamless ELO matchmaking algorithms, and gamified learning tools.
They made it accessible.
Exactly. They created an environment where anonymous grandmasters could log on and play hyper-fast, addictive speed chess, while kids in remote villages could learn the rules for free. They took a slow, elitist game and turned it into a hyper-accessible digital drug.
And that ecosystem absolutely exploded, which sets up our central collision. Fast forward back to 2022. That scrappy startup in a yurt is now the ultimate online arena.
Yeah, during the pandemic, chess went massively viral on platforms like Twitch.
Everyone was playing it. There are now an estimated 500 million regular players globally. Chess.com's valuation skyrockets over $1 billion.
$1 billion.
But here is the massive hidden conflict of interest operating right behind the scenes of the Cinquefield Cup match we started with. Chess.com has just made a secret $80 million offer to acquire Magnus Carlsen's own digital company, an app called Play Magnus.
Oh, wow. Which fundamentally changes the dynamic of Magnus sitting at that table with Niemann. He is no longer just a player defending a title. He is the face of a modern corporate monopoly.
Let's be real about this corporate merger for a second. It is an insane conflict of interest. It's the equivalent of the star quarterback of an NFL team also owning the television network that is broadcasting the Super Bowl.
It really is.
So when Magnus is staring across the board at Hans Niemann, watching his position collapse, we have to ask, is his fury actually about the integrity of the sport? Or is he terrified that a gum-chewing Gen Z kid is about to humiliate the greatest player alive, tanking his reputation just days before he closes an $80 million corporate buyout?
I mean, the financial paranoia is undeniably a massive factor. The stakes are astronomically high. But if we dig into the chess mechanics, Magnus's fear actually goes beyond just the money.
What do you mean?
Niemann represents a terrifying paradigm shift in human cognition. We talked earlier about how Anand used computers to prepare for Magnus in 2013, right? But Anand was still a human trying to memorize machine lines. Niemann's generation is entirely different. They don't just use engines to check their moves. They have internalized the engine's alien logic. They are essentially chess cyborgs.
They mimic the machines.
Exactly. They play moves that look absolutely absurd to a classical player, like Magnus sacrificing positional dominance or these microscopic mathematical advantages that only a processor calculating 200 million moves a second would understand.
So Magnus looks at Niemann and realizes his old weapon, the introduction of chaos, no longer works.
It doesn't work at all. You can't overload the human memory of a kid who learned to think like an algorithm.
That is terrifying for a reigning champion.
Yeah. Believing Niemann's perfect play is simply beyond analog human capability. Magnus decides he must take unprecedented action to protect his legacy, his pending fortune, and his very understanding of the game.
And this deeply held belief leads to the massive fallout you told in the book, where Magnus effectively boycotts Niemann and sets off this insane chain reaction of lawsuits, investigations, and basically a civil war within the chess community.
It tore the community apart.
Stepping back to look at the entire board, the arc we've traced today for you is just staggering. We watched an awkward, introverted 13-year-old genius conquer the analog world through pure human intuition.
Yeah.
And we followed his journey to the exact moment he found himself defending a billion-dollar digital empire against a teenager born of the computer age.
And I think the core realization here from the sources is that the definition of mastery is never static.
Right.
I mean, chess survived the fall of ancient empires, the printing press, multiple world wars, but its ultimate existential threat wasn't external.
It was internal.
Yes, the threat was the internal integration of high-speed digital technology with human ambition. It fundamentally changed what it means to be good at the game.
Which leaves us with a final lingering question for you to ponder long after this deep dive ends. We are rapidly entering a world where games with billions of possible combinations can be perfectly mapped by silicon chips and flawlessly executed by teenagers raised on pixels.
Very true.
So when perfect, mathematically optimal play is always just a click away, what happens to the human soul of competition? Do we inevitably lose the beautiful, chaotic, deeply human mistakes that made players like Magnus Carlsen legends in the first place?